At Kuze Maternity Hospital in Osaka, crowds gather to celebrate newborns, but one baby stands out, Mona Kawaii, born with a special charm that captivates everyone around her. As Mona grows up, her natural charm becomes obvious. During a game of hide and seek, when it's her turn to seek, the other kids don't even try to hide. Instead, they just stand there, wanting her to find them. This confuses Mona at first, since that's not how the game works, but it helps her realize she has a special way of drawing people to her. At 16, Mona moves to Tokyo. Now 17, she starts her days like any high school student, rushing to school after her alarm wakes her. The moment she arrives at school, the whole place lights up. Everyone, both boys and girls, can't help but stare. People are naturally drawn to her presence. However, there's one exception, Medaka Kuroiwa. While everyone else falls over themselves for Mona's attention, he remains completely uninterested. He's the only one who seems immune to her charm, which makes him stand out. When Mona greets her classmates with "good morning," they eagerly rush to respond. But when she greets Kuroiwa, who deliberately avoids looking at her, he barely mumbles a reply, as if someone is forcing him to answer. This sparks Mona's curiosity about the new transfer student. Noticing his different uniform, she asks if his new one hasn't arrived yet, then checks if he's adjusting well to the class. She offers to show him around the school, mentioning it's been 2 weeks since his transfer, and tells him to let her know if he needs anything. Kuroiwa seems uncomfortable with all the attention. He pinches the bridge of his nose between his eyes to calm himself down, muttering something under his breath. The other students watch with growing jealousy as Mona pays special attention to Kuroiwa. They whisper among themselves, questioning why she's even bothering with someone who just ignores her. Kuroiwa's immunity to Mona's charm particularly annoys them. Who is he to resist someone they all adore? Mona persists in trying to talk to Kuroiwa despite his obvious discomfort. Finally, he reaches his limit and firmly tells her to leave him alone. This sends the other students into a fury. How dare he speak to Mona that way? Hurt by his rejection, Mona returns to her seat, covering her face with her hands in embarrassment and disappointment. Kuroiwa shows no reaction to her distress, focusing instead on his phone. Mona wonders how there can be a guy who won't even acknowledge her. Her status as the school's queen bee takes a hit, and as she tries to figure out her next move, she sneaks a peek at his phone. There she discovers he's looking at cat pictures, repeatedly hitting the like button. Seeing an opportunity, Mona asks if he likes cats and offers to look at pictures with him. Kuroiwa looks up, surprised. While other guys in class shout about how cute Mona is, Kuroiwa maintains his composure despite noticing her beauty and charm. Mona thinks she's finally gotten through to him, convinced his heart must have skipped a beat. After staring at her for a moment, Kuroiwa responds with "no pics for me" and turns his back on her. The guys in class leap to Mona's defense, scolding Kuroiwa for embarrassing her. Then Kuroiwa does something even more shocking. Still facing away, he tells Mona to listen, making her perk up in anticipation. But his words crush her. He asks her to stop talking to him unless absolutely necessary. This hits Mona hard. Having been showered with attention and praise all her life, she runs away in complete defeat and embarrassment. Even as she flees, her classmates, females, whisper about how graceful she looks while running. Later that day, Mona tries a new strategy. While putting up a poster on a ladder, she shows off her long legs. Sure, this will catch Kuroiwa's attention, since it works on every other guy. But Kuroiwa walks past without a glance. Not giving up, she makes a bolder move, pretending to slip and fall while intentionally flashing her skirt. When she asks Kuroiwa if he saw anything, he simply shrugs and flatly states he didn't see a thing before walking away. Realizing this plan failed, Mona moves on to plan C. During math class, she raises her hand and tells the teacher she isn't feeling well, asking to go to the nurse's office. When the teacher suggests someone should accompany her, Mona quickly volunteers Kuroiwa before another classmate can offer. The teacher agrees, instructing Kuroiwa to ensure Mona reaches the nurse's office safely. At the nurse's office, Mona pushes Kuroiwa against the wall. He looks confused, reminding her that she's supposed to be sick. With a sly smile, Mona reveals that the nurse is never there at this time. Kuroiwa stares at her in surprise, while Mona feels strange, never having to work this hard to get a guy's attention. She quickly asks what he thinks of her, wondering if she's done something wrong or if he hates her, noticing how distant he always is. Looking uneasy, Kuroiwa shifts his weight and mumbles, "That's not it." These words give Mona a brief moment of victory, but his face remains cold. Before he can continue, she executes her next plan, pretending to trip on cotton and making them both fall onto the bed. Despite being on top of him, Kuroiwa maintains his cold stare, leaving Mona wondering how he can still look at her that way. Desperate and convinced her charm must work, she opens her uniform buttons and pretends like her hands mistakenly did that. For a brief moment, it seems to affect him, but Kuroiwa starts muttering, "Clear mind, clear spirit," fighting to resist her. Frustrated and embarrassed, Mona pulls back suddenly, almost falling off the bed. Kuroiwa catches her arm, but when she tells him she's fine and to let go, aware of her undone uniform, he quickly pulls her hand back, insisting it's not what she thinks. As Kuroiwa stands to leave, he pauses at the door, quietly telling her to save such actions for someone she actually likes, then walks out. Back in class, concerned classmates crowd around Mona's desk, asking if she's feeling better. She nods, saying she's fine, and quietly returns to her seat. She manages to thank Kuroiwa softly for taking her to the nurse's office. He responds and looks her way, but Mona can't meet his eyes. Her racing heart makes her realize she might be falling for him. The next morning, Mona arrives at school looking prettier than usual, drawing compliments from her classmates. When she sees Kuroiwa in the hallway and greets him, he replies but gives her a suspicious look. Meanwhile, a girl named Asahi watches with a sad expression as Kuroiwa passes by, though she quickly denies anything's wrong when her friends ask. At the basketball court during warm-ups, Mona stretching draws admiring looks from the male students. She calls out to Kuroiwa to join her, but he ignores her, even when other students relay her message. While the coach calls the girls to prepare for the game, Mona is deep in thought. She's frustrated that nothing has worked. Not her legs, her figure, or even more forward attempts. Remembering Kuroiwa's words from the nurse's office, she remains determined to make him fall for her. Ignoring the coach's team announcements, Mona loudly declares she's tired, ensuring everyone notices her glistening skin. She strategically lets her shirt right up, revealing her waist. Her classmates' exclamation about seeing a sacred treasure draws everyone's attention. While other guys stare mesmerized, Kuroiwa turns away, muttering his usual "clear mind, clear spirit" chant. This final rejection proves too much for Mona, who breaks down. Later at the water tap area, Kuroiwa is cooling off when Mona appears. Though she hasn't intentionally followed him, she wants to observe this guy who resists her charm. Kuroiwa senses her presence but can't look up, and Mona notices his nervousness. Using the tap next to him, Mona catches him stealing glances at her. Their eyes meet briefly before he looks away, pinching between his eyebrows. When she teases him about staring, she accidentally clenches her fist under the water, splashing herself completely. Mortified as her uniform turns sheer, she's surprised when Kuroiwa immediately gives her his shirt before walking away. Unknown to them, a classmate witnesses everything. The next day, Kuroiwa's friends confront him about being too harsh on Mona. He reveals he's the heir to a cat temple, and he only interacts with elderly people and goats. He's never learned to talk to girls, especially ones as pretty as Mona, admitting Tokyo is full of temptations. Though his friends urge him to be nicer, Kuroiwa worries he might fall for her, which is forbidden by his religious dedication. Later in class, Mona returns his washed shirt. When Kuroiwa says she shouldn't have bothered, she teases him about wanting it back with her scent. This triggers her familiar "clear mind, clear spirit" chant, but rather than discourage her, his struggle only strengthens her determination. As these two conflicting forces collide, Mona's growing determination and Kuroiwa's religious devotion, one has to wonder, who will break first in this battle of charm versus spirituality?